Usually when we talk about the birth of a multi-billion-dollar global industry, we picture boardrooms, right? Like venture capitalists in suits signing contracts.
Right, exactly. Or maybe, a sterile tech startup in a Silicon Valley garage
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly.
There's this assumption of a business plan, like a calculated strategy mapped out on a whiteboard.
Okay, let's unpack
Huh.
this. Because our mission for this deep dive is to take you, the listener, far away from any boardroom. We have a huge stack of sources today: university syllabi, book reviews, music history articles, even auction house records.
Yeah, it's a really diverse pile of material,
It really is. And we're going to trace the evolution of hip hop from a 50-cent back to school party in the Bronx all the way to a global languaculture.
which is quite the leap, honestly.
It's massive. So I want you to imagine it is August 11th, 1973. We are in the West
It's
Bronx.
setting the scene.
Right. We're stepping into this humid, sweat-drenched rec room of an apartment building at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. And there's this 18-year-old kid named Clive Campbell, who the neighborhood knows as DJ Kool Herc.
A legend, yeah.
And he's throwing a back-to-school party, not to launch a business, but he's just trying to raise enough cash so his younger sister Cindy can buy some clothes for the school year.
I mean, 50 cents for the boys at the door, 25 cents for the girls. It doesn't get more grassroots than that.
Exactly.
And that incredibly modest, hyperlocal fundraiser is widely cited by music historians as ground zero for hip-hop.
Wow.
But to really understand the mechanics of what happened in that room, our sources show we have to look at Herc's own origins, because he spent the first 12 years of his life in Jamaica.
Oh, right, the Jamaican sound system culture.
Exactly. He brought the DNA of that culture with him to New York. So we're talking about massive, physically imposing speakers, heavy dub effects like echo and reverb, and the tradition of toasting.
Toasting is like talking rhythmically over an instrumental track, right?
Spot on, yeah, hyping the crowd over the beat.
But the real innovation, the thing that completely rewired the trajectory of modern music, was how he manipulated the physical vinyl records themselves.
Yeah, this is the genius part.
Herc was essentially studying the psychology of the dance floor. He noticed the crowd. They always went the craziest during the breakbeat.
And just to clarify for everyone, the breakbeat being that specific, isolated section of a funk or soul record where all the vocals drop out, the melody strips away, and it is just the drummer going to work.
Pure rhythm.
Right, pure, unfiltered rhythm. But the problem, from a DJ's perspective at least, is that those breaks are incredibly short. Like, a funk break might only last 5 seconds before the singer comes back in.
Which is totally a buzzkill for the dancers.
Exactly.
So Herc does this brilliant thing. He buys 2 copies of the same James Brown record. He isolates that 5-second breakbeat on one turntable. And as that break comes to an end, he uses his mixer to instantly crossfade over to the second turntable.
Where he has the exact same breakbeat queued up and ready to drop.
Yes. And while that second record is playing, his hands are frantically spinning the first record back to the start of the break.
It's wild to picture. He essentially overrides the linear structure of the song to create an infinite hypnotic loop.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, he could just keep the dancers suspended in that absolute peak moment of the song indefinitely.
So, to our listener, I want you to hold that specific image in your head. 2 turntables, a mixer, and a pair of massive speakers in a cramped Bronx rec room.
A very humble setup.
Completely. Because decades later, that exact equipment Herc used that night crossed the auction block at Christie's and sold for over $850,000.
Man, it is a staggering valuation.
Unbelievable.
But here's the fascinating technical reality of Herc's innovation. He discovered the infinite loop, yeah, but he was hitting the literal physical limitations of the hardware.
How do you mean?
Well, executing that crossfade perfectly in the dark, dropping the needle in the exact right groove while the crowd is bumping into the table, it was chaotic.
Oh, sure, it would be.
It was very raw. It took another pioneer to turn that raw discovery into a precise science.
Joseph Sadler, better known, of course, as Grandmaster Flash.
The mechanical engineer of hip-hop, basically.
Right. If Herc is the visionary, Flash is the engineer. Flash looked at Herc's dual turntables setup and realized the friction of the machine was literally working against the DJ.
Yeah, because if you place your hand on a spinning vinyl record to hold it in place while you cue up the beat, that friction fights the turntable's motor.
Makes sense.
It creates resistance, it damages the hardware, and this is the worst part for the mix. When you finally let go of the record, there's a microsecond delay before the platter gets fully back up to speed.
And that delay completely ruins the seamlessness of the mix. You'd lose the beat.
Exactly.
So Flash decides to completely decouple the record from the spinning metal platter underneath it. And the way he does this is my favorite detail from the sources, he raids his mother's kitchen.
Wait, really? The kitchen?
Yes, he takes a piece of literal wax paper and a piece of felt, cuts them into the exact size of a 12-inch record, and sandwiches them between the turntable and the vinyl.
Oh my gosh. He invented the slip mat.
He invented the slip mat. I just have to pause on this. Literal wax paper from a kitchen cabinet.
Literally wax paper, just to eliminate the friction.
That is so
It's
cool.
brilliant. With that crude slip mat, the heavy metal platter of the turntable could keep spinning at exactly 33 1/3 RPM, completely unimpeded, while Flash's hand held the vinyl record dead still on top of it.
And the second he lifted his finger,
The record played instantly, at full speed. No drag, no delay.
amazing. And then you add in a pair of headphones so he can, hear the second record before pushing it out to the main speakers.
Right, queuing it up.
Yeah. And Flash is now performing what he called the quick mix. He's no longer just playing records. He's literally playing the turntables as a percussive instrument.
But our sources highlight this brilliant, unintended consequence of Flash's technical mastery.
What happened?
His mixing was so flawless, so visually and sonically mesmerizing that the crowd stopped doing the one thing they were there to do. They stopped dancing.
Wait, they just stood there?
Yeah, people would just crowd around the DJ table and stare at his hands.
Oh man, imagine being the guy throwing the party and your technical execution is so good that it literally kills the vibe.
I know. And Flash actually got massive stage fright because of it. He hated all these people just staring at him in total silence.
So what did he do?
Well, to deflect the attention, he hired Keith Cowboy and Mel Mel to jump on the microphone and do some vocal routines.
Just to distract them.
Yeah, their entire job was just to distract the crowd, get them hyped up, and get them back on the dance floor.
What's fascinating here is how this anxiety-driven decision catalyzed a massive sociological shift.
Oh, absolutely.
In the book Breakbeats in the Bronx, Joseph Widsey analyzes this exact moment. By placing the MCs in front of the DJ booth to act as a distraction, Flash inadvertently changed the internal conventions of the entire culture.
It's crazy to think about.
Right. He effectively birthed the rapper as the frontman, the main attraction. And somewhat tragically for Flash and his DJ peers, he unknowingly initiated this slow decline of the DJ as the absolute focal point of hip-hop.
He engineered his own replacement. It really is a profound irony.
It is. But as the MC steps forward into the spotlight, the technology behind the DJ booth undergoes a monumental evolution too.
Yeah, because human hands spinning vinyl can only move so fast. The culture needed a new machine.
And that machine kicks off what is widely considered hip-hop's golden age, stretching from roughly 1986 to 1996.
We are talking, of course, about the digital sampler, most notably machines like the Akai MPC-60.
Before this, you were restricted by the physical properties of two records, but the sampler changes the physics of the music entirely.
It totally rewrites the rules.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sampler allowed a producer to record a snippet of audio digitally and then map that audio to a 4x4 grid of physical rubber pads.
So you aren't just looping a breakbeat anymore. You are taking a microscopic slice of a drum hit, isolating it, and triggering it with your finger.
The analogy I often see used in the texts is that producers became audio archaeologists.
Oh, I like that. Digging through crates.
Yeah. Digging through forgotten jazz, obscure funk, old soul, and rock records, just looking for isolated sounds.
It's more than just finding the sounds, right? It's how they reassemble them.
Totally. Think of a sampler like a sonic ransom note. You know how a ransom note cuts individual letters out of different magazines to build a completely new sentence?
Yeah.
Producers were doing that with audio. They would cut a booming kick drum from a Led Zeppelin record, slice out a snare drum from James Brown, and grab a bizarre synthesizer whine from some 1970s sci-fi movie.
And then just glue them together on those rubber pads to play an entirely new drum pattern.
Exactly. And because they were tapping these rubber pads with their fingers, they were injecting human timing into it.
Right. Swing, the groove, the slight imperfections.
Yeah, into these rigid, isolated sounds. They were playing the drums backward, layering textures that had never existed in the same room together.
And two specific drum loops from this era effectively became the rhythmic DNA of modern music.
I know exactly which ones you mean.
Our historical sources point heavily to the Amen break, which is a 4-bar drum solo lifted from a 1969 B-side called Amen Brother by the Winstons.
An absolute classic.
And the other is Clyde Stubblefield's drum break on James Brown's 1970 track, Funky Drummer.
Oh, yeah.
Producers chopped up those specific milliseconds of audio, pitched them up, slowed them down, rearranged them. You can hear the ghosts of those two drum breaks in everything from Run DMC to Slipknot.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And right as this incredibly dense, sample-heavy sound is exploding out of New York, the business infrastructure finally catches up. You get the birth of Def Jam recording.
A huge turning point.
Huge! Russell Simmons, a sharp, street-smart party promoter, crosses paths with Rick Rubin, who was an NYU college student running a label out of his dorm room and was heavily influenced by punk rock.
Such an unlikely duo.
Truly. And they strip the music down to its absolute bare essentials. Huge 808 drum machines, scratching, and aggressive vocals. No disco melodies, no live bands.
It was raw, and it shattered the mainstream barrier. Def Jam secured the first #1 rap album on the Billboard 200 with the Beastie Boys' License to Ill in 1986.
Proving the financial viability of the culture.
Big time.
I do want to push back on a historical narrative from that era, though.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the traditional music establishment looked at the MPC-60 and this entire methodology and basically dismissed it as pure theft. They said, this isn't music, it's just stealing other people's songs.
Right. The whole sampling is stealing debate.
But looking at the source material we have, that feels like a massive misunderstanding of the medium. These were kids largely without access to expensive conservatories or classical training, treating the sampler as a brand new instrument.
Yeah, that's a much better way to frame it.
The level of auditory memory and the ear required to tune a jazz horn to match a funk bass line, it's essentially composing a complex collage.
It was a massive democratization of music production. You didn't need to hire a 30-piece orchestra. You just needed a brilliant ear and a stack of vinyl.
Exact.
But of course, as with any unregulated frontier, the Wild West era of sampling inevitably hit a massive legal brick wall.
The copyright lawsuits?
Yep. In 1991, the publisher for the singer Gilbert O'Sullivan sued Warner Brothers over a tiny loop sample used in the rapper Biz Markie's song Alone Again.
And that didn't go well for Biz Markie, did it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
The judge presiding over that case didn't just rule against Biz Markie, he fundamentally altered the economics of hip-hop. The judge literally started his written opinion with the biblical commandment, thou shalt not steal.
Wow.
Yeah, and he even referred the case for criminal prosecution.
That is intense. And then you have the 1960s rock band The Turtles suing the group De La Soul over an uncleared sample. That case was settled out of court for a reported $1.7 million.
Which is a huge sum. So overnight, the collage style of production we just talked about became a massive financial liability.
You just couldn't afford it anymore.
Right, you simply couldn't layer 20 different microscopic samples from 20 different artists on a single track. The legal clearance fees would bankrupt the record label before the album even hit the shelves.
And this legal pressure actually forces a geographic and sonic fracture in the music.
The genre splits.
Yeah. On the East Coast, producers stuck to their roots but adapted. Instead of layering 20 samples, they would find one obscure, incredibly cheap, or unrecognizable jazz or soul loop and build a gritty, boom-bap beat around it.
So this is the era of Nas, the Wu-Tang Clan, that gritty storytelling out of New York.
Exactly. But the West Coast takes a completely different technological approach. Since clearing samples of old Parliament Funkadelic records was too expensive, producers like Dr. Dre figured out a brilliant workaround.
They hired live studio musicians.
Yes. They hired them to replay the bass lines and the melodies using Moog synthesizers and live instruments.
Which is so clever.
Yep.
They recreate the vibe of the sample without actually triggering the copyright of the original audio recording.
Exactly the mechanism. And that heavy reliance on live synthesizers birthed G-Funk, a slower, incredibly cinematic, laid-back sonic landscape.
And sitting right at the origin of that West Coast explosion is NWA.
Right. In 1988, they release Straight Outta Compton. Sonically, it's a masterpiece, but lyrically, it was a massive departure from the party anthems of the prior decade.
It really was.
And just to be clear, our role here is just to impartially report what the sources say about this era. We're looking at the historical impact, not endorsing the viewpoints.
Absolutely.
So the texts outline that the lyrics provided a stark, unfiltered look into the realities of California gang culture, the illegal drug trade, and severe police abuses.
And the content was highly explicit. It triggered an immediate visceral reaction from the establishment.
Oh, big time.
Milt Alaric, an assistant director of the FBI, drafted a warning letter on official bureau letterhead and sent it directly to the group's record label, condemning the music.
Which is wild to think about. That FBI letter is currently sitting behind glass in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Piece of history.
Yeah. And the pushback also directly resulted in the creation of the black and white parental advisory explicit lyrics sticker that became a fixture on album covers.
Now, if we look at the academic sources we pulled, particularly Matthew O'Ware's sociological review of breakbeats in the Bronx, there is a crucial analysis of this era.
What does he point out?
The intense aggression, the hypermasculinity, the gang tropes. Academics argue these weren't just reflections of random street violence. They were the natural evolution of hip-hop's deeply embedded foundational convention, which is hypercompetitiveness.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense. The entire culture was built on the battle.
Exactly.
DJs battling across parks to see who had the loudest sound system, breakdancers battling in circles, graffiti artists battling for prime real estate on subway cars.
The battle was the core metric of respect. But as millions of dollars flooded the industry and record labels grew into corporate empires, that competitive convention scaled up.
It wasn't just two guys in a park anymore.
No, it became a multi-million-dollar proxy war.
Which sets the stage for the infamous East Coast versus West Coast media war of the 1990s.
A very dark period.
Yeah, very dark. You have Bad Boy Records in New York, spearheaded by Sean Combs and the Notorious B.I.G., locked in an intensely amplified rivalry with Death Row Records in Los Angeles, led by Suge Knight, Dr. Dre, and Tupac Shakur.
And what began as competitive lyricism on wax escalated into a very real, very tragic conflict.
The rivalry ultimately peaked with the drive-by shooting deaths of Tupac Shakur in 1996 and the Notorious B.I.G. just 6 months later in 1997.
Two of the most prolific generation-defining talents, gone before either of them turned 26.
It's just devastating.
It was a huge shock to the foundation of the culture. But according to the historical retrospectives, that profound loss forced a period of intense reflection.
How so?
Well, the hyper-territorialism that defined the mid-90s gradually gave way to a movement of healing. Artists from opposing coasts actively sought each other out for collaborations, realizing that the geographical divide was literally killing the culture.
Right. And from that unification, the culture didn't just rebuild, it transcended music entirely.
It really did.
So what does this all mean for us today? If you look at the syllabus we source from the University of Texas at Austin, the academic framework doesn't even categorize hip-hop merely as a genre of music anymore.
What do they call it?
They classify it as a languaculture.
Languaculture, that's a term used in anthropology, right? To describe a culture that is inextricably bound to and defined by shared ways of using language.
Exactly. It's not just the words, it's the rhythm, the syntax, the attitude, and the physical expression of the communication.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, sociologists refer to hip-hop as uniquely glocal.
Glocal, like global and local.
Exactly, the simultaneous interaction of the global and the local. Hip-hop provides a universal, globally understood framework.
Yeah.
You know, the 44 beat, the rhythmic delivery of poetry, the swagger.
Sure.
But within that rigid global framework, it allows for fiercely hyper-local expression.
Oh, I see. Like, Def Jam isn't just operating out of a dorm room in New York anymore. They have branches in Africa, in Southeast Asia.
Right.
Marginalized youth in Paris, in Tokyo, in Johannesburg are taking the structural blueprint of the MPC sampler and the Bronx breakbeat and using it to broadcast their own neighborhood disputes, their own political struggles.
We're even seeing indigenous populations around the world using the rhythm and cadence of hip-hop to intentionally revive dying local languages.
Wait, really? That's incredible.
Yeah, they are incorporating ancient dialects into modern sample-based beats, making those languages culturally relevant to a new generation of youth who might otherwise just abandon them.
Think about the magnitude of that trajectory for a second. A looping technique invented by an 18-year-old kid to keep his neighbors dancing long enough to buy his sister some school clothes has evolved into the preeminent universal language of resistance, identity, and youth culture on the planet.
It's unparalleled in modern history.
Truly. We've tracked an incredible evolution today. From DJ Kool Herc physically wrestling with the limitations of vinyl, to Grandmaster Flash engineering the slip mat and accidentally inventing the frontman MC.
Such a wild journey.
It is. We watched the Akai MPC sampler turn kids into audio archaeologists, triggering a golden age that was ultimately derailed by copyright lawsuits. We saw the resulting sonic fracture birth G-Funk, survive the tragic coastal rivalries, and eventually unify into a global languaculture.
And synthesizing all of these sources leaves us with one final, deeply provocative question.
Ooh, lay it on us.
If you look closely, hip-hop was fundamentally born from the act of recycling. It was taking analog media-old vinyl records, gathering dust, chopping them up, and splicing them into completely new cultural artifact.
Right.
So what happens to this languaculture next? As we plunge headfirst into an era defined by artificial intelligence, algorithmic generation, and infinite digital noise, how will the next generation of kids recycle today's technology to create the next revolution in sound?
Wow. What is the modern digital equivalent of a piece of wax paper and felt?
Exactly.
It really makes you wonder what the next kid sitting in a rec room somewhere is dreaming up right now.
It sure does.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.